The silence in deep space carried no warning. The Dralax warships moved through the darkness like predators stalking prey. Their hulls reflected no light, absorbing everything into their black surfaces. Inside the lead vessel, Commander Hrolvax watched the scanner display with cold satisfaction. A human transport drifted ahead, completely unaware of the danger closing in. The ship carried families, supplies, and dreams of a new colony world. Hrolvax had seen thousands of such vessels over his long career. They all ended the same way. His scaled fingers tapped against the command console. The crimson eyes set deep in his reptilian face never blinked. Natural armor plating covered his massive frame, scarred from decades of enforcing the Empire's will. He turned to his second officer. "Prepare boarding teams. Make sure they understand the protocol." The Dralax Empire had ruled the galaxy for 3 centuries through a simple principle. Fear worked better than diplomacy. One brutal lesson prevented 100 future problems. Every species learned this eventually. The humans would be no different. On the transport New Dawn, David Fletcher helped his daughter Amy secure her safety harness. The 8-year-old clutched her worn stuffed rabbit, eyes wide with excitement rather than fear. This journey represented everything David had worked for. A fresh start on a world where Amy could grow up under open skies instead of crowded station corridors. "Dad, how much longer until we see the new planet?" Amy asked. David smiled, brushing a strand of brown hair from her face. "Another week, sweetheart. Then you can run through real grass instead of hydroponics gardens." 3 rows behind them, Priya Anand reviewed engineering schematics on her tablet. The 32-year-old had signed on as the colony's lead infrastructure specialist. She noticed the power fluctuation first. The lights dimmed for just a moment, then returned to normal. Her trained instincts immediately went on alert. In the medical bay, Robert Walsh organized supplies for the journey. The gray-templed doctor had delivered 17 bobbies during the voyage so far. He believed in new beginnings, in the resilience of the human spirit. That faith would be tested soon. The pilot cabin held Carmen Rodriguez, whose military training kept her eyes constantly scanning the instruments. The readout made no sense at first. 3 massive signatures appeared on the edge of sensor range, moving impossibly fast. She reached for the communication panel. The transmission crackled through every speaker on New Dawn before Carmen could send her warning. "Human vessel, cut your engines immediately. Prepare for boarding. Resistance will result in the destruction of your ship." The voice carried weight like grinding stone. David felt Amy grip his hand tighter. Around them, other families whispered in confusion and growing fear. Most had never heard of the Dralax. Earth remained relatively isolated from galactic politics. That isolation had just ended. Carmen's fingers flew across the controls, but the transport carried no weapons. Colony ships never did. The Dralax warships surrounded them within minutes, close enough that their hulls blocked out the stars. Docking clamps seized New Dawn with metallic shrieks that echoed through the corridors. Hrolvax led the boarding party himself. He enjoyed this part, the moment when a new species realized their place in the natural order. His soldiers moved with practiced efficiency, herding the humans into the main cargo bay. Nearly 300 people crowded together, confused and frightened. The commander stood before them, his massive frame making even the tallest humans look small. He spoke in perfect English, having studied the language during the approach. "I am Commander Hrolvax of the Dralax Empire. Your species has entered our territory without permission. This demonstrates either ignorance or arrogance. Both require correction." David kept Amy behind him, but she peeked around his legs to stare at the alien. She had never seen anything like the towering reptilian figure. Other Dralax soldiers lined the walls, weapons ready. "We meant no offense," someone called out from the crowd. "We're just colonists looking for a new home." Hrolvax's eyes fixed on the speaker. Intent is irrelevant. Outcome is what matters. The Dralax maintain order in this region of space through clear lessons. When a species enters our domain, they must understand the cost of disobedience. He walked slowly through the crowd, studying the humans. They looked soft, weak. No natural armor, no claws or fangs. How had such fragile creatures even achieved space travel? Near the front, he noticed the small girl hiding behind her father. "Perfect. You," Hrolvax pointed at David, "step forward." David's heart hammered, but he moved forward, keeping himself between Amy and the commander. Hrolvax noticed the protective gesture. Excellent. The emotional attachment would make the lesson more effective. "Your name?" "David Fletcher." "And the small one behind you?" David said nothing. His jaw clenched. Hrolvax smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Bring the child here." "No," David's voice came out steady despite his terror. "Whatever you want, take it from me. Leave her alone." The commander had heard similar pleas countless times before, in hundreds of languages across dozens of worlds. The script never changed. He gestured to two soldiers. They grabbed David's arms, pulling him aside. Amy screamed for her father. Priya pushed forward through the crowd, but other Dralax blocked her path. Robert tried to reason with the guards, speaking in his calmest medical voice. Carmen calculated distances, angles, knowing she stood no chance but preparing anyway. Hrolvax lifted Amy by her arm. The stuffed rabbit fell to the floor. The little girl kicked and struggled, crying for her dad. The commander held her up for everyone to see. "Your species is new to our empire. Let me teach you how we maintain order. One example prevents 1,000 future problems. One life teaches 300 others the price of defiance." David fought against the soldiers holding him. "Please, she's just a child, take me instead." Hrolvax drew his weapon. "That would teach nothing. You must live to remember, to carry the lesson." The energy blast echoed through the cargo bay. Amy's body went limp. The commander dropped her carelessly to the floor beside the fallen rabbit. Complete silence followed, so absolute it seemed to swallow all sound in the universe. David's scream shattered that silence. He collapsed, the soldiers releasing him to fall beside his daughter's body. His hands trembled as he reached for her, gathering her into his arms. Around him, humans wept, some turning away, others frozen in horror. Hrolvax surveyed his work with satisfaction. The lesson had been delivered perfectly. These humans would remember. They would obey, just like every other species eventually did. "Process them," he ordered his soldiers. "Take them to the labor facilities on Dralax 7. They will serve the Empire now." As the Dralax herded the prisoners toward their ships, none of them noticed the change already beginning. The humans moved in shock, yes, but something else flickered behind their eyes. Not the broken submission Hrolvax expected. Something colder. Something that would grow in the darkness of labor camps and whispered conversations. The commander had taught them about fear. What he failed to understand was what humans did with that fear, how they transformed it, how they never, ever forgot. The moon hung lifeless against the black sky. Dralax 7 offered nothing but gray rock and processed air. The labor camp sprawled across its surface like a metallic infection, all harsh angles and cold efficiency. Giant industrial processors hummed day and night, extracting rare minerals from the moon's core. David Fletcher no longer looked at the stars. 6 months had passed since the boarding of New Dawn, but time held no meaning anymore. He worked the excavation lines with mechanical precision, his hands operating drilling equipment without conscious thought. The other part of his mind, the part that still felt, existed somewhere else. Somewhere with Amy's laughter and her questions about everything. The Dralax guards walked their patrols with bored confidence. Why wouldn't they? Every species broke eventually. The camp held 12 different alien races, all resigned to their fate. The four-armed Telvan people worked the sorting lines. The insectoid chicks operated the refineries with their natural heat resistance. Everyone knew their place. In the massive sleeping barracks, bunks stretched in endless rows. Humans occupied Section 7, separated from other species by wire fencing. The Dralax claimed this prevented conflicts. Really, it made monitoring easier. Priya sat on her bunk, apparently reading a technical manual the guards had allowed her to keep. Her eyes moved across the pages, but her mind cataloged something else entirely. Every corridor she walked during repair assignments, every security camera placement, every power junction and backup system. She committed it all to memory, then shared it with others during the brief periods when guards rotated shifts. Robert moved between bunks, checking on the sick and injured. The Dralax provided minimal medical supplies, considering slaves valuable only while productive. He learned to improvise to stretch resources. More importantly, he learned Dralax biology. Their anatomy, their weaknesses, how their natural armor had gaps at specific joints. He shared this knowledge carefully, disguising lessons as casual conversation. Carmen worked the communication hub, a privilege earned by demonstrating technical skills the Dralax needed. They never suspected she understood their language, picked up during long hours listening to guard chatter. She learned their protocols, their shift patterns, their casual arrogance. Most valuable of all, she discovered their communication network connected to other labor camps across Empire space. At night, when the lights dimmed to simulate evening, small groups gathered. The guards allowed minimal socialization, another mistake born of confidence. They thought broken slaves posed no threat. A Telvan worker named Presh approached David one evening. The alien's 4 arms moved in a gesture of sympathy. "Human, you must accept this. Fighting only brings more pain. My people tried to resist once 3 generations ago. The Dralax destroyed our homeworld. Now we survive by obedience. This is the way." David looked up, meeting Presh's compound eyes. "How do you live with it?" "We forget, we endure, we survive." Presh's voice carried the weariness of inherited trauma. "You must do the same." But humans didn't forget, couldn't forget. That difference became obvious as months passed. Other species moved through their days with hollow efficiency. Humans whispered at night, sharing stories. Stories of Earth history, of resistance movements, of people who fought against impossible odds. In Section 7, on the wall behind David's bunk, someone had carved something into the metal, just a name, Amy Fletcher. Below it, dates marking her short life. Other humans added more names. Loved ones lost, people killed during the boarding. The wall became a memorial growing night by night. The Dralax noticed but didn't care. Let the slaves have their rituals. Grief was harmless. It made them easier to control. They were wrong. David stood before the carved names one night, his fingers tracing Amy's. Carmen stood beside him, with Priya and Robert nearby. Other humans gathered close enough to hear but far enough to appear casual. "I've mapped every system in the eastern section," Priya whispered. "Power, ventilation, security. I can disable them all from the maintenance hub." Carmen nodded. "I made contact with 3 other camps. There are humans scattered across 18 Dralax facilities. They're all waiting for a signal." Robert added quietly, "I've documented Dralax physiology, shared it with everyone who will listen. They're tough, but not invincible. The joints between their armor plates are vulnerable. Their 3rd vertebrae connects to a major neural cluster." David listened, something cold and purposeful settling into his chest where grief had lived. "How many humans total?" "Best estimate, 40,000 across all camps," Carmen replied. "Most are survivors from colony ships like ours. The Dralax have been intercepting human vessels for 2 years. "They've been practicing on us," Priya said bitterly, "testing how we react, what breaks us." "They made a mistake." David's voice carried no emotion, just flat certainty. "They think fear controls people. They don't understand what humans do when we're afraid." A chick's worker scuttled past, pausing to listen. The insectoid's translator clicked. You plan rebellion? Impossible. The Dralax are too strong. Accept fate like the rest of us. Carmen looked at the chick's worker. Maybe we're too stupid to accept fate. The alien left, shaking its carapace. Foolish humans. They would learn like everyone else. But in the following weeks, the humans kept not learning. They adapted instead. Priya trained others in systems engineering, disguising lessons as repair work. Robert held medical training sessions that included detailed anatomical information about their captors. Carmen built an underground communication network using old Earth encryption the Dralax didn't recognize. David became something else entirely. The kind father disappeared, replaced by someone who could compartmentalize pain into purpose. He organized, coordinated, planned. Others looked to him not because he demanded it, but because he channeled their rage into something useful. Hrolvax visited the camp 3 months into their imprisonment. He walked through the work areas, inspecting his investment. The humans appeared compliant, working their assignments without complaint. Perfect. Another species properly broken. But one of his officers reported something odd. Commander, the humans behave strangely. They don't seem diminished. Other species after this much time show clear submission. These ones just seem quiet. Hrolvax dismissed it. Humans are weak, soft. They're just slow to break, give them time. In Section 7 that night, David addressed a gathering of nearly 200 humans. Guards walked their patrol routes predictable as clockwork. The humans had timed everything perfectly. They think we're broken, David said softly. Let them think it. Every day they underestimate us is another day we prepare. Carmen has confirmed coordination with other camps. Priya has the facility systems mapped. Robert has trained medics and combat personnel. We're ready. Someone asked, ready for what? We're slaves with no weapons facing an empire. David touched the wall where Amy's name was carved. We're humans with nothing left to lose facing an empire that doesn't understand what that means. They ruled by fear. They killed a child to teach us our place. So let's teach them something about humans. Let's teach them that some things matter more than survival. Let's teach them her name. The wall had grown crowded with names now, hundreds of them, each one a reason, each one a reminder of why submission was impossible. In the darkness of the barracks, humans began to smile, not with happiness but with terrible purpose. The Dralax had created something far more dangerous than rebels. They had created people with a unified cause and nothing to lose. The lessons were about to begin. The message arrived through channels so old the Dralax had forgotten they existed. Carmen's fingers moved across the salvaged communications panel she had hidden in a maintenance shaft. The encryption used Earth military protocols from 2 centuries ago, simple by modern standards but completely unknown to their captors. 3 words appeared on the screen, repeated from 18 different facilities across Dralax space. Amy's name received. 40,000 humans, scattered across a dozen worlds, had just confirmed they were ready. Carmen deleted the message and returned to her official duties before the guards noticed her absence. The uprising began at shift change. The Dralax ran their facilities with mechanical precision, and humans had studied that precision for 6 months. They knew every minute when guards rotated, when surveillance shifted focus, when the brief windows of opportunity opened. Section 7 erupted first. Priya triggered her carefully planted code from the maintenance hub. Every light in the eastern quadrant died simultaneously. Emergency systems kicked in 3 seconds later, exactly as expected. Those 3 seconds were enough. David moved through the darkness with 50 others, their eyes already adjusted. They had practiced this in total blackness in the sleeping barracks, learning to navigate by touch and sound. The first guard post fell silently. Humans swarmed the confused Dralax before they could raise an alarm, targeting the vulnerable points Robert had identified. The natural armor that made them seem invincible became a liability when attackers knew exactly where the gaps were. Weapons changed hands. Humans who had been colony farmers and engineers now moved with deadly efficiency. Carmen had trained everyone who would listen, passing on her military knowledge. The Dralax had dismissed her background as irrelevant. Dead warriors taught no one. The armory fell within 10 minutes. Priya had mapped every approach, every sensor, every lock mechanism. What the Dralax thought was impenetrable security became a puzzle humans had already solved. Suddenly, slaves had weapons that matched their captors. Across the facility, similar scenes played out in perfect coordination. The communication hub, the vehicle hangar, the command center. Humans struck everywhere at once, overwhelming guards who had never imagined prey might become predators. In the sorting facility, Presh watched in amazement as humans fought with controlled fury. The Telvan had lived under Dralak's rule for 3 generations. Resistance was supposed to be impossible. Yet here stood soft-skinned creatures without armor or natural weapons, systematically dismantling everything. A human woman named Lisa helped Presh up after an explosion knocked them both down. "You said we should accept this. Learn to survive. What if there's a third option?" Presh's 4 arms trembled. "They will destroy you for this. The Empire will come with overwhelming force. They always do." "Probably," Lisa agreed, checking her acquired weapon. "But we're done accepting things. Want to help?" The Telvan stared at the offered weapon. 3 generations of learned helplessness warred against something that might have been hope. Slowly, one hand reached out. The command center held the facility's senior staff. Commander Ralph had overseen Dralax 7 for 6 years, a boring but stable assignment. Slaves were slaves. They worked, they obeyed, they eventually died. The natural order. The doors exploded inward. Ralph reached for his weapon, but human weapons fired first. Not to kill, interestingly. They shot to disable, to capture. Very strange for a rebellion. David entered with Robert at his side. The medic immediately began treating wounded Dralax despite protests from other humans. David approached Ralph, who lay pinned under debris, his leg twisted at an unnatural angle. "You're going to let us leave," David said calmly. "You're going to release all the prisoners here, not just humans, everyone." Ralph laughed, blood on his teeth. "Fool. Even if you take this facility, the Empire will crush you. Fleet Commander Sector specializes in ending rebellions. He's destroyed 47 resistance movements. You'll just be 48. "Maybe," David agreed. "But tonight, on 18 different worlds, 40,000 humans are doing exactly what we're doing right now. Your empire is about to learn something important about my species." "What's that?" David's eyes held no mercy, only cold purpose. "We remember every name, every face, every child you killed to teach us fear. We remember, and we're done being afraid." The facility fell completely within 3 hours. Dralax guards found themselves imprisoned in their own holding cells. Other alien species stood uncertain, freedom too foreign a concept to grasp immediately. The Chick's workers clustered together, waiting to see what the new masters wanted. Carmen addressed them from the command center, her voice broadcast throughout the facility. "We're not your new masters. We're offering you a choice. Stay and help build something different, or take ships and leave. We're keeping the guards as prisoners, but the rest of you are free." The concept seemed impossible to most. One Chick's elder approached David. "Free to go where? The Dralax control everything. We have no homeworlds left, no place to run." "Then stay and fight," David replied. "Or stay and build. Or leave and find somewhere the Empire hasn't touched yet. It's your choice. That's what freedom means." The response from Dralax High Command arrived faster than expected. Sector's fleet was already mobilizing. The facility's long-range sensors picked up their approach vector. Massive warships, enough firepower to sterilize the entire moon. Priya studied the readouts. They'll be here in 6 hours. We can't fight that kind of force. We don't have to, Carmen said, fingers flying across the tactical display. We just have to survive long enough. Long enough for what? Carmen smiled grimly. For the other 17 facilities to do what we did. For 40,000 humans to show the galaxy that the Dralax aren't invincible. For everyone who's been too afraid to resist to see that it's possible. David stood before the memorial wall they had rebuilt in the command center, Amy's name at the top, surrounded by hundreds of others. They wanted to teach us about fear. They succeeded. But fear isn't what they thought it was. It's not weakness. It's fuel. Outside, freed prisoners made their choices. Some left immediately, taking whatever ships they could fly. Others stayed, picking up weapons or heading to the medical bay to help Robert. Presh and several other Telvan joined the defensive preparations, their 4 arms proving useful for handling multiple systems. The chick's elder found David again. Why do this? You could have escaped, taken ships and fled. Why fight when the odds are impossible? David touched Amy's carved name. Because running means they win. It means the fear controls us. It means she died for nothing. He turned to face the alien. Humans have a saying, we don't negotiate with monsters, we end them. 6 hours until Sector arrived. 6 hours to prepare. The moon base that had been a prison was becoming a fortress. Humans who had been farmers and teachers now programmed defensive systems and prepared ambush points. They moved with purpose born from grief transformed into action. The Dralax had taught them about fear. Now class was in session, and the teachers were about to become students. Fleet Commander Sector studied the tactical display with cold satisfaction. 43 years of service. 47 crushed rebellions. Species after species had learned the hard way that resistance against the Dralax Empire meant extinction. These humans would be no different. His flagship, the Absolute Authority, led a battle group of 12 warships, enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. For one moon base full of escaped slaves, it was absurd overkill. But that was the point. The Dralax didn't just end rebellions, they erased them so completely that other species lost the will to even try. Time to weapons range, Sector asked his tactical officer. 17 minutes, Commander. The moon base has powered up its defensive grid, but those systems are designed for asteroid defense. Against our fleet, they're irrelevant. Sector nodded. 17 minutes, then 3 minutes of bombardment. 20 minutes total to end another pointless uprising. He'd be back at Dralax Prime before the week ended. Prepare firing solutions. Target the command center first, then systematic destruction of all facilities. Leave nothing functional. On Dralax 7, Carmen watched the approaching fleet with calculated calm. She stood in the command center surrounded by displays showing enemy ship positions, defensive system status, and communication feeds from every part of the facility. Priya worked beside her, making constant adjustments to the power grid. Their formation is textbook, Carmen observed. Flagship-centered, support vessels in standard defensive sphere. They're not even trying to be creative. Why would they? Priya replied. According to their records, this approach has worked 47 times. They have no reason to adapt. David joined them, Robert at his side. The medic had transformed the facility's hospital into a proper trauma center, knowing casualties were coming. How long do we have? 16 minutes to weapons range, Carmen said. Once they start firing, our shields will last maybe 90 seconds against that much firepower. Then we make those 90 seconds count. David activated the facility-wide communication system. All personnel, this is Fletcher. The Dralax fleet is almost here. They expect us to be terrified, to surrender, to beg for mercy like every other species they've broken. Are we going to do that? Throughout the facility, humans answered, not with words but with action. Defensive positions locked down, weapon systems powered up, modified mining equipment positioned at key angles. Everyone knew the plan, everyone knew the odds. Nobody was backing down. Presh, working one of the defensive batteries with 3 other Telvin, felt something strange. After 3 generations of submission, the emotion was almost unrecognizable. Hope. No, something different. Purpose, maybe. Or just the satisfaction of finally hitting back. The Dralax fleet entered weapons range. Sector gave the order to fire. Energy beams capable of melting through meters of reinforced steel lanced toward the moon base. The defensive shields flared bright, absorbing and deflecting as much as they could. But Carmen had spent 6 months studying Dralek's tactical doctrine. She knew they always fired in the same pattern. Command center first, then systematic expansion. Predictable, which meant exploitable. Now, she shouted. Priya had redistributed the shield power. Instead of spreading it evenly across the facility, she had concentrated everything on 3 specific sections. The command center's shields held far longer than Sector expected, long enough for the return fire. The modified mining lasers weren't military weapons. They were designed for cutting through solid rock, but Carmen had repurposed them, and Priya had overclocked their power systems far beyond safety limits. 20 beams fired simultaneously, all targeting the same coordinates Carmen had calculated. Sector's shields absorbed the first impacts easily, but the humans kept firing, concentrating all their firepower on one spot. The flagship's shield generator couldn't redistribute fast enough. Focused damage overwhelmed the defenses. One mining laser broke through, punching into the Absolute Authority's port engine. The explosion wasn't catastrophic, but it knocked the flagship's positioning off. Suddenly, Sector's perfect formation had a wobble in its center. Impossible, the tactical officer said. They shouldn't have weapons that can penetrate our shields. Sector recovered quickly. All ships increase bombardment, destroy them now. But Carmen had bought time. Every second the fleet wasted adjusting was another second for Phase 2. David gave the signal, and the modified cargo haulers launched from the base's underground hangar. They weren't warships. They were industrial vehicles retrofitted with weapons and armor plating. 17 small craft against 12 massive warships. Suicide by any reasonable calculation. Carmen piloted the lead hauler, with 20 others following her vector. They didn't approach in formation. They scattered, using the moon's terrain for cover, popping up at unpredictable angles. The haulers had one advantage the Dralax didn't expect. They were small enough and fast enough that the big warships couldn't track them all simultaneously. Hit and run, Carmen broadcast to her pilots. We're not trying to destroy them, just annoy them, make them angry, make them stupid. The haulers strafed the fleet, their improvised weapons barely scratching the warship hulls. But that wasn't the point. The point was to make Sector react emotionally instead of tactically, to make the proud warrior lose his composure. It worked. Sector watched the irritating little craft darting between his ships and felt rage building. How dare these primitive creatures resist? How dare they sting the Empire like insects? Break formation, he ordered. Pursue those craft, destroy them all. His tactical officer hesitated. Commander, that will leave gaps in our defensive sphere. It violates standard. I know what it violates, Sector roared. These slaves need to learn their lesson, chase them down. The warships broke formation, pursuing individual haulers. Carmen led 3 of them on a chase through the moon's canyon systems, using her smaller ship's maneuverability. Behind her, the massive warships struggled to match her turns. On the facility, Priya monitored the changing battlefield. They broke formation, just like she predicted. David watched the tactical display. The Dralax ships now spread across the battlefield, focused on individual targets instead of coordinated assault. Send the signal. At 17 other facilities across Dralax space, humans received the same 3 words Carmen had sent 6 hours earlier. But this time, the message was different. They can bleed. The footage came from Dralax 7's sensors, showing the mighty Dralax fleet scattered and frustrated, chasing cargo haulers like predators who couldn't catch rabbits, showing the Absolute Authority's damaged engine, proof that their shields could be overwhelmed, showing humans fighting instead of cowering. On those other 17 worlds, humans watched and learned. The Dralax weren't invincible. Their tactics were predictable. Their pride made them stupid. This information spread like wildfire through the underground communication network. Sector finally destroyed Carmen's hauler. She ejected at the last second, her escape pod picked up by another human pilot. The fleet commander felt satisfaction as the wreckage burned. But when he looked at his tactical display, the satisfaction died. He'd lost 4 ships, not destroyed but damaged badly enough to require withdrawal. His fleet now numbered 8 functional warships. The facility's shields were down, but his formation was shattered, and those damned humans were still firing mining lasers from the surface. Worse, his communication officer reported something alarming. "Commander, we're receiving distress calls from 6 other facilities. Rebellions in progress. Coordinated attacks. They're requesting immediate support." Sector stared at the display. The humans had baited him, used his pride against him, kept him engaged here while uprisings erupted elsewhere. This wasn't just one random rebellion, it was coordinated, planned. "Withdraw to orbital distance," he ordered quietly. "Regroup and assess." His tactical officer looked shocked. "Commander, we've never withdrawn from." "I know what we've never done." Sector's claws dug into his command console. "But these humans aren't fighting like slaves. They're fighting like they've already won." On the surface, David watched the fleet pull back. Not a victory, not yet, but not a defeat either. They had survived. More importantly, they had proven something to 40,000 humans across Empire space. The Dralax could be hurt, could be outthought, could be beaten. Robert's communication came through from the medical bay. "We have wounded but no fatalities. The Telvin and Chicks who stayed fought well. Presh wants to talk to you." David found the 4-armed alien in the hospital, bandaging a minor wound. Presh looked up with all 4 eyes shining. "3 generations my people accepted slavery. 3 generations we told ourselves resistance was impossible. You humans are either the bravest species in the galaxy or the most insane." David smiled tiredly. "Probably both. Are you staying?" All 4 of Presh's arms moved in a gesture David had learned meant absolute certainty. "My grandchildren will hear about this day, about the day prey became predators. Yes, I'm staying." Across the facility, freed slaves made the same choice. The Dralax had taught them fear for so long. Now humans were teaching them something different. Not hope exactly. Something harder, more dangerous. They were teaching the galaxy how to fight back. The rebellion spread like fire through dry grass. On 14 different worlds, human populations rose against their Dralax captors. Each uprising carried the same rallying cry, Amy Fletcher's name, and the promise that fear would no longer control them. The mining colony on Kelrath 3 fell within 2 hours. Humans used the same tactics developed at Dralax 7, hitting during shift changes, targeting vulnerable points, moving with coordinated precision. The Dralax garrison fled in confusion, unable to comprehend slaves who fought like trained soldiers. At the orbital processing station above Telvos, humans took control of the refinery and broadcast footage of Dralax guards surrendering. The message reached enslaved populations on 6 nearby systems. If it could happen at Telvos, it could happen anywhere. On Dralax Prime itself, the Empire's homeworld, High Command watched the reports with growing alarm. Defense Minister Calrith stood before the Emergency Council, trying to maintain composure while his world crumbled. 18 facilities lost in 3 days, 40,000 humans, plus an unknown number of other species joining them. Fleet Commander Sector requests reinforcements, but every available ship is already deployed trying to contain other uprisings. The High Commander, an ancient Dralax named Thargon, had ruled for 40 years. He had seen the Empire expand across 100 star systems. Never in all that time had he faced organized resistance on this scale. How is this possible? We broke species with populations in the billions. These humans number in the tens of thousands. They should be insignificant. Calrith pulled up tactical displays. Every human facility we've studied shows the same pattern. They share information, coordinate attacks, adapt to our responses. Most concerning, they're recruiting. Other species that accepted slavery for generations are now joining human forces. In a corner of the council chamber, Velmas watched and listened. The junior official had spent years studying conquered species, trying to understand what made the Empire's control so absolute. Now that control was failing, and Velmas saw the pattern the others missed. "We created this," Velmas said quietly. The council turned to stare. Speaking without permission during emergency sessions violated protocol, but Thargon gestured for continuation. "Explain yourself." Velmas stepped forward. Every other species we conquered had something to lose: homeworlds, culture, future generations, so they submitted to preserve what remained. But these humans, we killed their children in front of them, destroyed their hope, gave them nothing to protect except each other. Your point? We removed their reason to submit. We thought extreme violence would break them faster. Instead, we created 40,000 individuals with absolutely nothing left to lose. And creatures with nothing to lose are the most dangerous things in the universe. The council chamber fell silent. Outside, reports continued flooding in. Another facility lost. Another Dralax garrison in retreat. The empire that had stood for 3 centuries was fracturing in days. On Dralax 7, David coordinated the broader resistance movement from the captured command center. Communication feeds from 18 facilities created a complex web of information. He had become something unexpected, a leader of a galactic rebellion despite having no military rank or training, just a father who refused to let his daughter's death be meaningless. Carmen entered, exhausted from piloting missions. 3 more systems confirmed uprising. The Chicks workers at Malik Station took control of their facility with minimal human help. They watched our tactics and adapted them. The Dralax trained the galaxy to be afraid, Priya said, working on fleet coordination. We're teaching them to be angry instead. That's spreading faster than any virus. Robert's medical reports showed interesting statistics. Casualty rates among rebels remained surprisingly low. Humans fought smart, not reckless. They targeted specific vulnerabilities, used superior tactics to compensate for inferior numbers. The Dralax, trained to rely on overwhelming force and intimidation, struggled against opponents who refused to be intimidated. A new communication arrived, this one directly from Dralax Prime. Velmas's face appeared on screen. David studied the alien, noting the absence of usual Dralax arrogance. David Fletcher, I am Velmas, junior official of the Dralax High Command. I wish to discuss terms. Terms? David's voice carried ice. You want to negotiate. I want to prevent further bloodshed. The High Command is prepared to offer concessions, improved conditions at labor facilities, better treatment, perhaps even limited autonomy for human populations. David leaned back. Around him, other humans had gathered to listen. Carmen, Priya, Robert, dozens more. Behind them, Telvin and Chicks and other species who had joined the fight, all waiting to see how he'd respond. Let me tell you about my daughter, David began. Amy was 8 years old. She liked singing and asked questions about everything. Your commander Hrolvax shot her to teach us obedience. That was your idea of maintaining order. Velma's expression showed something that might have been shame. That was wrong. I acknowledge it, but continuing this war will cost millions of lives. Surely some compromise. There is no compromise with people who kill children to make a point. David's voice remained calm, which made it more terrifying. You offer better conditions in facilities that shouldn't exist. Limited autonomy for people who should be free. These aren't concessions. They're insults. Then what do you want? David looked at the gathered crowd. Humans who had been farmers and teachers. Aliens who had been slaves for generations. All of them watching, waiting for words that would define what came next. The end of your empire. Complete freedom for every enslaved population. War crime trials for every Dralax official who ordered executions or torture, starting with Commander Hrolvax and working up. Nothing less. Velma's absorbed this. The High Command will never agree to such terms. You're demanding our complete surrender. Then we'll take it by force. David gestured to the displays showing liberated facilities. 18 sites in 3 days. How many will it be in 3 weeks, 3 months? Your empire is built on fear. We're not afraid anymore. That means your only real weapon is gone. You'll lose. Eventually, our superior numbers and resources. Maybe, David interrupted, but we'll lose fighting, not cowering. And every day this continues, more species join us. More of your slaves remember they outnumber you 10,000 to 1. The only question is whether you lose your empire slowly or quickly. The transmission ended. Velma's reported back to the High Command, knowing they'd reject everything. The Council's response was predictable. Mobilize all military forces. Crush the rebellions with overwhelming violence. Show the galaxy that the Dralax Empire still ruled absolutely. But Velma's saw what they didn't. Every act of Dralax violence now came with footage broadcast across rebel networks. Every atrocity became recruiting material. The Empire's traditional weapons were strengthening their enemies. On Kelrath III, a Dralax patrol executed captured rebels publicly, thinking it would discourage resistance. Instead, 10,000 previously compliant workers rioted within hours. The garrison fell by morning. At the Telvos refinery, High Command sent a warship to bombard rebel positions. Carmen's network intercepted the order and evacuated everyone before the strikes hit. The footage of Dralax destroying empty facilities to kill slaves who'd already escaped spread across 50 star systems. Sector, regrouping his forces at a secure location, watched his empire crumble. He had crushed 47 rebellions using the same playbook. Overwhelming force, brutal reprisals, public executions. It had always worked. These humans had somehow reversed everything. They made Dralax's strength look like weakness, made Dralax's brutality become the rebellion's best recruiting tool. They fought not to win battles, but to prove the Empire could be resisted. And across 100 worlds, slaves who had submitted for decades watched and learned. The Dralax weren't unstoppable. Their weapons could be captured. Their tactics could be countered. Their entire philosophy of control had a fatal flaw. It required the enslaved to stay afraid, and fear, once broken, never quite came back the same way. On Dralax 7, David stood at Amy's memorial wall. More names had been added, people lost in the fighting, heroes who died so others could be free. The wall had become something sacred to the rebellion, a reminder of what they fought for. Presh found him there. The Telvan homeworld sent a message. 3 million of my people are preparing to rise against the Dralax garrison. They want tactical support. David nodded slowly. Tell them we're coming, tell them all, every enslaved world, every species that's been broken. Tell them the humans are teaching one lesson only, how to fight back. The galaxy was learning, and the Dralax Empire, built on 3 centuries of fear, was discovering that empires built on fear eventually meet people who aren't afraid anymore. 8 months after Amy Fletcher died on the deck of a colony transport, Commander Hrolvax sat in a cell on what used to be called Dralax 7. The facility had been renamed Haven Station, and Hrolvax hated every moment of consciousness. The cell was clean. He received adequate food and water. Nobody tortured him. Somehow that made it worse. The Dralax way was simple. Enemies died or submitted. This strange human concept of imprisonment and trials confused him. Outside his cell, the galaxy had transformed. The Dralax Empire, which stood for 300 years, collapsed in 7 months, not through military conquest, but through internal dissolution. World after world broke free as enslaved populations remembered they outnumbered their captors. The final blow came when the Dralax homeworld's own slave population rose up. 2 billion workers across Dralax Prime coordinated a general strike that crippled the government. High command fled to orbital stations, then surrendered when human forces cut off their supplies. The Empire didn't fall to superior weapons. It fell because 40,000 humans taught the galaxy that fear could be overcome. Now came the complicated part: justice. The tribunal chamber occupied the former command center where Hrolvax once ordered executions. Rows of seats held representatives from 40 different species: Telvin, Chicks, humans, and dozens of others who'd suffered under Dralax rule. They would serve as judges and jury. David Fletcher stood at the prosecutor's position. He had spent 2 months studying galactic law, learning precedents and procedures. Carmen helped compile evidence. Priya analyzed logistics. Robert provided psychological evaluations. Hrolvax entered the chamber in restraints, flanked by human guards. He held his head high, refusing to show fear. The tribunal's head judge, a Telvin elder named Thespra, called the proceedings to order. Commander Hrolvax, you stand accused of crimes against 47 species across 300 systems. Mass murder, torture, enslavement. How do you answer these charges? Hrolvax's voice remained steady. I followed the Empire's laws. I maintained order as instructed. If that makes me criminal, then every Dralax who ever served is guilty. David stepped forward. You're right. This tribunal isn't just about you. It's about establishing that following orders doesn't excuse atrocity, that maintaining order through terror is itself criminal. He activated a display showing the transport New Dawn's interior. Footage recovered from the ship systems showed the boarding, showed Amy clutching her stuffed rabbit, showed Hrolvax raising his weapon. This is Amy Fletcher, 8 years old. You executed her to teach humans about fear. Tell the tribunal why a child needed to die. Hrolvax watched the footage without emotion. 1 death prevented 1,000 future problems. Standard protocol for integrating new species. Quick, efficient, effective. Except it wasn't effective, David replied. That 1 death sparked a rebellion that destroyed your entire empire. So even by your own logic, it was a failure. The trial continued for 3 days. Witness after witness testified. Families described loved ones killed. Workers detailed conditions in labor camps. Other Dralax officials corroborated the systematic nature of the Empire's brutality. Velmas took the stand on the 2nd day. The junior official had become the face of Dralax reformation, leading citizens who wanted to acknowledge their species' crimes. I served the Empire for 15 years, Velmas testified. I watched executions. I approved labor quotas that killed thousands through overwork. I told myself it was necessary for order. I was wrong. We were all wrong. The Dralax built an empire on suffering and called it civilization. The tribunal's verdict surprised no one, guilty on all counts, but the sentence sparked debate. Many species demanded execution. Eye for an eye, the Dralax way. David argued against it. If we execute him, we're just perpetuating the cycle. We become what we fought against. The point isn't revenge. It's accountability and prevention. Thespra announced the sentence: life imprisonment without possibility of release. Hrolvax would spend the rest of his days watching the galaxy he tried to terrorize become free and flourishing, forced to witness his life's work undone completely. The commander showed no reaction, but as guards led him away, he stopped in front of David. The child, what was her name again? David met his eyes. Amy Fletcher, and you'll hear it every day for the rest of your life. Because this station, this movement, everything that destroyed your empire, it all started with her name. Outside the tribunal, Haven Station thrived. The labor camp had transformed into a hub of the new galactic cooperation. Species that had been enemies under Dralak's rule now worked together to rebuild. Priya coordinated infrastructure development for liberated worlds. Robert trained medical personnel from a dozen species. Carmen helped establish a proper defense network, this time to protect against oppression rather than enforce it. The memorial wall had grown massive. Thousands of names now, each representing someone lost to Dralak's cruelty. But it wasn't a wall of grief anymore. It had become a wall of remembrance and purpose. A young Telvan child, born free because of the rebellion, asked her parent about the names. Presh, now serving on Haven Station's council, explained gently. These are heroes, each one fought or died so we could be free. This first name, Amy Fletcher, she was human, very young. Her death taught the galaxy something important. What? That some things matter more than survival, that justice matters, that freedom matters, that remembering matters. David visited the wall daily. Amy's name remained at the top, carefully maintained. Other parents who'd lost children added their names nearby. The wall had become sacred to multiple species. 6 months after the tribunal, Velmas approached David at the memorial. The Dralak's reformer carried a bundle wrapped in cloth. I wanted you to have this. We found it in the transport's recovered cargo. David unwrapped it carefully. Amy's stuffed rabbit, somehow preserved. Its worn fabric and missing eye exactly as he remembered. His hands shook. Thank you, he managed. Velmas gestured to the wall. My people are establishing education programs, teaching young Dralaks about the Empire's crimes, about what we did, about how you stopped us. This memorial will be part of the curriculum. Good, the galaxy needs to remember, all of it, the good and the terrible. The new Galactic Council met monthly at Haven Station. 40 species represented, making decisions through consensus rather than force. It was messy, inefficient, and frequently frustrating, also infinitely better than Empire. Carmen presented defense reports. Former Dralak's military forces have mostly integrated peacefully. Some holdouts remain in outer systems, but they're isolated. The bigger challenge is preventing new empires from forming. David nodded. The Council needs to establish principles, clear lines about what's acceptable, war crimes definitions, enforcement mechanisms. We can't just react to the next Dralaks. The work continued, building something new from the ruins of something terrible. It wasn't easy. Species disagreed constantly. Old hatreds didn't disappear overnight, but they were trying, which was more than the galaxy had done in centuries. Robert found David at the memorial late one night. You should sleep. The council session starts early. I will. David touched Amy's name gently. I just needed to tell her about today. The council voted to establish the Fletcher Accords, universal standards for treatment of all sentient beings, named after her. She'd be proud of you. She'd be 10 years old asking impossible questions and singing off-key. David smiled sadly. But maybe this is better. Maybe her name meaning something helps. The galaxy had learned hard lessons. That empires built on fear eventually crumble. That brutality creates resistance. That even the smallest voice, if remembered, can echo across the stars. High above Haven Station, freed worlds rebuilt. Species learned to cooperate. Children grew up without slavery. None of it was perfect, but it was free. And on a memorial wall on a barren moon, a little girl's name reminded the galaxy every day. Some things matter more than survival. Some deaths, properly remembered, can change everything. The Dralax ruled by fear and killed a human child to prove it. They succeeded in the killing, but the fear, that died with her, and from that death a galaxy found the courage to be free. Amy Fletcher, 8 years old, never knew she'd become a symbol, but the universe would never forget her name.